I'm Dr. Jen with White Wave Bodywork, and today what I want to talk to you about is a sun salutation with some verbal cues to try to help you with alignment. So hopefully those will be helpful. It's going to take a long time to get through the sun salute talking through all the verbal cues, but what I want to do is try to just bring to your attention what the thoughts are that are going through my head while I'm doing my sun salute. So let's start at the front of our mat. And the first thing I look for is placing my feet mindfully. So what I like to try to do is take my feet and make a fist like this and stick it in between my feet and make my feet about a fist's width apart. That tries to take the width of my legs and put it like right at my sits bones distance apart. It's about the width of your sits bones. So when people say hip distance apart for a mountain pose, that's what I mean when I say it. So the next thing we're going to look at is trying to lift the toes, all of the little toes, keeping the big toes down. Lift the toes, spread them out, and give yourself a nice big foundation for this mountain pose, this big, strong, standing pose. The next thing we do is look at the arches of our feet. Are the arches lifted? A lot of us will have flat feet that are caved in or really high arches that are rocked out to the side. So you want to try to find a nice balance where all four corners of your feet are even on the floor. Then what I'm going to look at is, in this stance, are my toes, my second toes, pointed forward? So in order to have your feet aligned parallel forward, I look at the center of the ankle. So if I were to point at the center of my ankle there and draw two lines straight down to my second toes, is that line like railroad tracks? Is it going parallel? If it's not, and your feet are turned out to the side, notice that and see what it feels like to make it go into that railroad track position. If that's too much for your hips, it feels like it's straining something, don't do it. But we're aiming for this straightforward symmetrical pose. From here, I'm going to look at my legs and make sure my legs are nice and active. Now, one of the things that happens is sometimes when we do mountain pose, everybody's just kind of standing at the front of their mat. What I want you to do is actually do the pose. So there's like doing the pose and then there's doing the pose. Making those muscles active by pulling your kneecaps up towards your face, really tensing up those quad muscles will help you feel strong and grounded in this mountain pose. You want a really strong foundation for this mountain. The next thing we're going to look at is the hips. So from here, a lot of times I'll see people doing all those things, but then they're kind of throwing their hips forward. So unhinge your hips, take your hips back over your heels, and get a little robin's egg dip in your lower back. Just try that for now. Then tuck up or tuck back into a posterior pelvic tilt, like 20%. So you get your little robin's egg, really stick your butt out, and then tuck like 20%. So you're really stacked up, your hips are active, your legs are active, your kneecaps are still pulling up to your face, your arches are still lifted. And then we're going to look at the front of the rib cage. Pull the fronts of the ribs back. Shoulders. Make sure your side body is long. A lot of times with shoulders we'll see this thing happening here. So think side body long, shoulders back, and then throat back. Because this is something I see all the time. So here, we're pulling the throat back and tucking the chin. So we're trying to stack our joints all up in a straight line on top of each other for a nice, strong, stable mountain. Then inhale your hands up towards the sky, and exhale, push your hips back, fold forward, trying to keep that robin's egg dip in your low back. Now for me, that's about as far as I can go before I feel a really intense pull down my hamstrings and my calves. So what I'm going to do in order to keep that robin's egg shape is bend my knees until I get parallel to the floor. So my chest is parallel to the floor, and then I'm going to round forward just to try to help it not pull on my back quite so much. Our backs get a lot of pull just as they are. So from here, I'm trying to let my head dangle, and I'm just pedaling my knees back and forth to try to stretch out my hamstrings one at a time. Then we're going to have it follow the breath a little bit. So as I fold forward, I'm going to exhale, let the head hang
Try to shift my weight back. My weight always wants to come forward, so I'm trying to make sure that my butt stays back over my heels or my ankles a little bit. And then inhale, look up and go. Try to create that robin's egg shape again in your low back. So for me, I have to kind of bend my knees a little bit more. Exhale, fold forward. Let the head hang. Pedal it out a little bit more. This is like my first fold forward, so it's a little stiffer than it will be at the end. Look up. And when I say look up, I don't want you to look up and straighten your neck. I want you to just lift the chest and try to pull the chin away from the floor. That same kind of double chins position. Exhale, fold forward. Hang the head, loosey-goosey like a rag doll. And then inhale, step back with the left leg. Now, as we step back with the left leg, I'm looking at stepping back in that same line as I was with my fist apart, that same kind of distance apart. And the other thing I'm looking at is my foot turned in or out? I still want my second toe pointed straight forward and my heel pointed straight up towards the ceiling. The next thing I'm looking at is the position of this front knee. I want that knee to be stacked up over my ankle, and I also want my arch to still be lifted here. From here, I'm going to try to press up and come upright. So as I do that, what happens is I start to feel a big pull here. What I want to do is try to tuck my pelvis and stack it upright, and also try to bring my left hip forward and my right hip back to try to square my hips forward, because this position automatically makes us want to do this. So we're trying to square the hips forward, tuck the pelvis, and then extend this back knee without losing that pelvic tuck. So we've got a good foundation here. We're stacked up. We're making sure the muscles are still hugging the bones. They're active. And we're drawing the legs together like they're scissors. Isometrically, not actually moving, but drawing them toward each other like scissors to create that stability. From that place of stability, I'm going to reach up. And a lot of times what happens when I reach up is my chest comes forward. My rib cage splays forward. So I'm going to check in with my rib cage and I'll say, can I stack my rib cage and my diaphragm up on top of my pelvic floor and my pelvis there? So usually that's tacked back. And then I'm going to check my head and neck. I'm going to try to pull my chin back to that double chins position and try to get my ears stacked up over my shoulders and reach up towards the sky, trying to squeeze my biceps by my ears. Take a nice full deep breath there. On your exhale, fold down towards the floor. Place your hands on either side of your foot and step back into a high plank position. From here, what I want to do is grab the mat with my sticky little fingers, like I'm a clawed animal, like a little bird that has claws on the tips of her fingers. So the tips of my fingers are white, and like really gripping with them, and all the rest of my knuckles are pointed down. The wrist creases go straight across, parallel with the front of my mat. And what I'm going to try to do here, as I lower, I'm going to try to take my chest first and keep my hips high. Because when I don't, a lot of times I'll see this in this lowering position. I want my abs to stay active the whole time. And as I'm lowering down, I'm drawing my shoulder blades toward each other and my elbows in toward my rib cage. Lower down, chest comes first. Made it. From here, I'm going to roll the fronts of my thighs in, hug my heels together, press my feet down, shrug my shoulders up toward my ears, back towards the ceiling, hug the elbows in by the sides, and then still having my grippy little fingers with those fingertips all white, I'm going to pull my body forward and pull my chin back away from the floor. This is my little cobra. And I'm going to check in with all of those actions again. Are my feet still pressing down? I didn't do this one, but my tailbones should be a little bit tucked down. And then pull my chin back, hug my shoulders and my elbows towards the ceiling, towards the midline. And then I'm going to press back into downward facing dog. On an exhale. So in downward facing dog, what I think is, are my fingers still gripping? I look at my little elbow pits, and I want my elbow pits to be looking at each other, not looking forward like this overextended. For those of us who have hypermobility in our joints, we have to really mind if we're locking them out or not. So my elbow pits are looking at each other. I'm trying to make my side body still get long, so I'm still shrugging my shoulders up toward my ears to get them away from my hips. Really lengthening out that side body. And then we're going to look at the low back. I want the low back to have that dip in it, that robin's egg shape. And also, I want the rib cage to tack back at the same time. A lot of times we'll be getting that robin's egg shape from sagging our rib cage down toward the mat. So activate those upper abdominals and bring the rib cage back toward the ceiling. Tip the hips up towards the ceiling and see how far you can straighten out your knees. Now in order to do that, I have to lift my heels really high. So from here, I've checked into all my mechanics, and now I'm going to see if I can lower one heel toward the ground at a time, minding that low back. I want to still keep the hips lifted towards the ceiling and that robin's egg shape in my low back. All right, I'm going to come to stillness there and then step forward with that left leg. Again, looking at the second toe. Is it still pointed straight forward? Is my arch lifted? The foot in the back. Is the second toe pointed straight forward? Is my heel lifted straight up towards the ceiling? On an inhale, I'm going to rise up and try to make sure this front knee is pointed in the direction of the second toe, not to the left or the right. It's stacked up over the ankle. And then we're going to look at the pelvis. Tuck the pelvis in this posterior pelvic tilt here to counteract that tilt that it wants to do backwards. So counterbalance. Let's try to straighten out the back knee. Make sure all the muscles are nice and active and stable. Hug the midline with both legs like your legs are scissors and they're trying to pull together. Extend that back knee towards the ceiling. Sink the front knee down. Keep it over that front ankle. And on an inhale, reach up. As I reach up, my rib cage automatically wants to escape, so I tack back to activate my upper abdominals. I don't know if you can see that movement. I'm going to try to exaggerate it. Lift up, tack back. And I'm going to check my neck, pull it back. Check my arms, pull them back by my ears. And then on an exhale, fold forward. Inhale here. Exhale, step forward into a forward fold. And just notice how that forward fold feels different from the first time we did it. For me, it feels a lot less of a pull down the backs of my legs, and I feel like I don't necessarily need to bend my knees so much anymore. But it's nice to explore that and just kind of check in with it. The more we do it, the easier it gets. So I'm taking a couple deep breaths here. And then on my next inhale, I'm going to bend my knees so I can really get this dip in my low back. Inhale and come up, trying to keep that robin's egg shape in my low back, pushing through my heels to stand, and then bringing my hands back down to heart center. So that's one full revolution of a type of sun salute. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed it. Give me some comments in the comments section below about what you thought. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.